Good morning. Thank you very much for attending our webinar today. I'm Rebecca Jennings, Senior Client Advisor here at Global Reviews, and it's my role to talk to you today a little bit about our latest higher learning desktop research into universities and how they meet or don't their prospective students' needs online in terms of, is this a university that suits my needs? Can I find a course that I want to do? Am I qualified to start this course? Now, as I say, I'm Rebecca Jennings, and I've been here at Global Reviews for a number of years now. For those of you who may not be aware of who we are, just very quickly, we are a very well-established analytics, insight, and intelligence provider across Australasia, UK, Ireland, and Europe. I've been around for around 18 years. What we do gives you an insight into why your potential prospects behave like they do when they're doing research online and research on your website, why they make the decisions they make when they are researching your brand and your product, what's important, particularly in this industry, to prospective students when they're looking to apply, and what are the issues that you're having as you go through that journey in terms of selling yourselves to prospective students. This is a study that's been going on for a number of years, particularly in the Australian market. We've been working with a number of higher learning institutions for many years, both with reference to their websites looking at domestic students, but also international students, students who want to study at home. So a variety of types of study. As I say, this is a well-established research program in higher learning. But not just in higher learning. What I'm going to talk to you today about our digital sales effectiveness program is also something we run across a number of other products, a number of other industries across, again, Australasia, Ireland, Europe, the UK. So we work with a number of other brands in things like travel, finance, lots of different types of personal finance, banking, savings, energy, betting, retail, so insurance. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, as I say, is higher learning, about universities experience, but what you'll see as you go through is very much influenced and enhanced by the fact that we look at a wide variety of industries as well as higher learning, because obviously your students aren't just engaging with higher learning websites, they're engaging with banks, building societies, mobile phone providers, travel operators as well every day in their everyday lives. So they are beginning to expect certain things. They know if Expedia can do something, if Google can do something, if their bank can do something, why can't you, as a university, make their experience as pleasant and as easy as they can? So their expectations are set not just by what they are seeing within your industry, but what they are seeing within all of these other industries too. So it might be the case as we go through that the best example of something is not from a higher learning institution. It might be the best example of search is from another industry altogether. And I say that's where a lot of the value comes in here within the DSE and the fruition, which is another sort of version of this that we do across other industries. We have 18 years of experience of talking not just to higher learning institutions, but to a very wide variety of other brands and industries too. So what I'm going to talk to you about the next half hour or so is something we call the digital sales effectiveness research. Now, we have research that goes across the user journey from first discovering brands in this market, so Googling, higher institution Googling degrees, so how they actually come to discover the brand. We then have this research we're going to talk about today, which is the digital sales effectiveness research, which is looking at the consider and act phases of that sort of journey to deciding on a university. So how effectively do you engage with students, help them match a product or service to their needs when they come to your website, and then how easy is it for them to actually apply for a course with you? And that's the DSE that we're going to talk about a little bit this morning. We're going to talk about a couple of sections from that. We also then do the next stage, which is about relate. So how do you sort of talk to users and prospective clients, prospective students once they've actually signed up with you. And that's sort of the next stage. What we're going to talk about is this middle section today, consider and act. And as I say, we're going to spend about half an hour looking at some specific elements within consider. The information and the data that goes into the digital sales effectiveness research comes from both prospective students. We have over 1,000 prospective students do this this research on a yearly basis, and each wave has around 800 students actually going through the research. So we get insight from what they say, what they do, what they feel, what they think. But we also have, running alongside that, an expert review of each of the sites in the study, which is conducted by internal experts within Global Reviews. A set of around 300, 350 criteria that are yes/no criteria through the study. They're not up to us to decide whether we like the colour. They are very much yes/no. Does the site have a phone number on the homepage? If it does, then does it have opening hours? Things like that. So a set of best practice criteria across the journey, as well as what the consumers are doing and saying and thinking. So we asked the students some specific tasks. There are a set of users that do each of these tasks on each different website. There are, I think, 27 individual higher learning institutions in this study. So there's a separate group of consumers that are asked to do tasks on each of those. We can see how successful they are. We can see where they go, what they do. We have their click streams. We have the voice of their customer. We ask them what they think about the experience. So there's a lot of what they actually manage to do and say about specific tasks. We have their attitude. So what did they think about the site before they went in? What did they think about the institution? Was that changed as they went through the journey? What were their expectations of what they were supposed to be getting? What's important to them? And did that journey meet their needs? We have an audit from, again, these prospective students. They actually rate the navigation, look and feel of the content as they go through this step-by-step journey. And as I say, then finally, we have this best practice audit, which is something we do across the journey of all the content and tools and pages as a functionality as users go through the journey. All of that is processed. The consider and act journeys are actually then broken down into further stages, and we'll see that later, all the way through from initial expectations, coming to the homepage. Does it meet my needs? Does it look as if I have something that will be interesting? Can I find a list of courses? Can I find whether I would be qualified to start those courses? Why this institution? Why this university? And then through the application process. So there is insight from both the students and the audit at each of those stages. Everything is weighted, because obviously not every single one of these individual criteria is as important as everything else. So there's thousands of pieces of data in here, and they're all weighted, and they go into a nice big black box, and we produce a score, which I will show you later. Obviously, the score is interesting. The score enables us to rank the universities in this process. So there's 27, I think, in this process this time around. But obviously what's most interesting is how you make that score up. What are the strings that you can pull to change your score? Because some of the things will be much easier to change than others. Changing in-depth functionality may take some time. Making sure you've got phone number, opening hours on each of your phone numbers probably takes a lot less. So what we actually do with clients is talk them through how that score is made up and what they can realistically start changing in the short term, medium term, and obviously long term. So this particular study, as I say, is our Q2 DSE study, a total of just under 800 participants with 27 Australian higher learning institutions included, and you've got them all there. That is a set that, where there's a core, about 20 or 22 that gets done every 6 months, and there are some changes that we do as well, make sure we're covering perhaps people doing something a little bit different. There's been an increase in online study, so we've put a few brands that have websites dedicated to online study in there to make sure it's fresh, to make sure we've got some say insight from people doing something perhaps a little bit different each time round. But that's the core of the data we're going to be looking at today. As I said a moment ago when I showed you the inputs, the top line insight from this is a score. And as I say, it's always nice to be able to rank yourself. It's always nice to be able to say, this is where I am. I'm at the top. I'm in the middle, I'm making progress. So we do create an overall score for each of the institutions. We can see how that changes over time as well. You can see a few of these have taken a few leaps over the last 6 months. So QUT, for example, plus 3 percentage points over that period. But as I said earlier, what's really interesting when we go a little bit further in a moment is actually looking at what makes up some of this score, what you can actually do in terms of practically changing it over 6 months, say 6 months to a year. But that is the spread of the scores we have. It's quite a big spread, from 69% there at the top for Edith Cowan and Deakin down to sort of 48% at the bottom. Although having said that, we do quite frequently see increases on 6 months of 3, 4, 5%. We've got a 3% say here. We've had bigger leaps before, so it is entirely feasible that will mix up next time round. There's not a big gap between the first sort of 5, 6, 7, 8. We could see some increases that would change that up and mix that up next time. This score, and what I'm going to talk primarily about today, is about the desktop version of this study. We have just started running the mobile version of this study, so exactly the same concept, consumers going through the journey, but on a mobile device. The desktop study is all done on a laptop or a desktop device. The mobile is all done on a mobile device, because obviously what the people tend to be looking for is different, and obviously the best practice audit, the criteria will be different depending on the device that we're using. So we do run them as separate studies, although obviously they're a very similar approach, very similar concept. So just out of interest, I thought it'd be interesting to show you this study, which states the top scores from that this time around. And again, interestingly, we've got Deakin and Edith Cowan at the top there. Then UTAS. Again, we've got a relatively small spread here. It looks a little bit larger because of the scale of the graph, but we've actually only got 10% between the bottom and the top here. And I can certainly see that's an achievable increase within certainly probably a year to 18 months. So I would again expect this to start mixing it up a little bit perhaps as we go through further studies on the mobile device. So that's at the top of the tree, essentially. That's the overall score. But as I said earlier, we're really interested in how is that made up? What are the scores at each step of the journey? And how can you, as a brand, start to influence that? Well, this is the graph showing the scores of the top performer at each stage and the average at each stage across those steps, from first coming to the website, the homepage, does it meet expectations, am I going any further, do I trust this brand, all the way through to application and help and support. So as you can see, what we've got is almost like a sine wave. Always think it's a sine wave. Interesting to see what the sound it actually made would be. You've got areas where there's industry pain, where the average is low, the high isn't particularly high. So that tends to be around external comparison, for example, and that is something we see across all the industries we talk to. Every industry does badly at explicit external comparison. I am the best person for you because, and saying, well, the other industry, I have a better, for example, higher average income a year after graduating, things like that. Explicit external comparison tend to be very poor at. People tend to be quite poor at this idea of matching products to need, which is what we're going to be talking about today. This idea that, what have you got? Okay, I can find a list of your courses, but actually, do you have something that suits my needs particularly? Can I find the qualification requirement to do this course? Can I find information about what I'll actually be doing on the course? So this is sort of detail, does it suit my needs particularly? And that's very much what we're going to talk about a little bit later. I like this one as well, just because it shows that if you look at the top, the logos at the top are the top performer for each of those stages. And it's nice sometimes to be able to show this, but actually it's not the same brand all the way along. We saw that Deakin and ECU actually are the highest overall, but they are not the highest at every stage. They're not the highest at more than 2 stages, in fact. So you've actually got a situation where even the great brands are not great at everything. And it's really interesting to see who's good at what. In different industries, obviously, different people have looked at different areas and focused on different areas at different times. But that's really interesting because it means there's a lot of examples out there for you can say, actually, these guys are doing well here, these guys are doing well here. There's a lot of really interesting ideas coming through from the industry. It's not just one brand dominating across the industry. So that's our sine wave. So what we're going to do now is look a little bit more about certain elements of that. As I say, we're going to talk a little bit more about this evaluating options element, matching to needs. Do you have something that suits my needs particularly? And what are those needs? Well, obviously, or fairly obviously, there are the standard hygiene requirements that students are looking for websites easy to navigate, information is easy to understand. Obviously, we understand that's important. Where we're coming from in the next step here is looking at how important this particular matching to needs really is. So, top of the sort of next step of priorities for students when we ask them what's important on a website when deciding on a degree or course, the ability to see available course based on entry requirements, so scores, past experience. Do I have what is required to do this course to apply for it? Can I compare course options? Are there any tools to help me understand what would be right for me? So that is really what we're going to talk about today, and about the struggles that some universities have in convincing potential students that they do have courses that would meet their needs. So this is a specific task. I was talking earlier about we ask users to do some very specific things, and this is one of them, where they're actually asked very specifically to go and look at a particular course and find out whether a particular type of pre-study, so a pre-qualification in maths or in English, would be required to do that course. Obviously, for every university, that specific task is slightly different, because not every university runs, say, in Bachelor of Accounting course. We do make sure the task is targeted towards each particular university and can be achieved. There's no point asking consumers for something we know they can't do. So that task will differ very slightly depending on the institution, which is why we haven't got it here. But it is essentially go and find whether you need this particular pre-qualification to do a particular course. It's very specific. So our students then go off around the website to try and find that piece of information, find the information page about that course, and whether they would be required to have, let's say, any pre-qualification to do it. And what's interesting here is that what I've just shown you is the top 10 institutions in terms of success. So could consumers find the information? The highest percentage, actually 88%, found it on the University of Southern Australia line. So we don't have any institutions who manage a 100% success rate. But even with the highest success rates, you're still finding a lot of problems. These are not pleasant experiences, even when consumers can find the information. So the evaluation is essentially the score, the percentage of consumers who said, no, it was all fine, I didn't have a problem. And again, University of Southern Australia getting a 70%. So okay, but even there, 88% success, 30% still saying, no, I had problems on the way. 55% for Griffith. So again, 45% saying, yeah, I found it, but actually I really had problems on the way. So even if universities are successful in letting people find, in helping people find this information, the process is generally not a simple one, and leads confusers to a certain amount of confusion along the way, and we'll see why. On average, about half of users say they have problems when they're finding this information. This is the evaluation for all of the universities in that set, and you can see we've got about half of the brands here have more than 40% of people saying, no, I had a problem with doing this. So it's a key piece of information that consumers require. We've just seen in their needs, it's sort of top of their second set of needs, trying to match this product, to match this study, but they're having a lot of problems in doing so. So what are the kind of problems that are coming up? So here are just the kind of information that we're getting from 3 of the brands who had low success rates and low evaluation. I just picked these three. There are obviously a number of others we could pick, but UTS, Wollongong and Monash, showing a variety of issues. A lot of issues around finding where to start looking was not easy. Information was not where I expected it to be. So we get a lot of voice of customer about it's confusing, I don't know where it was, I got lost. So around the navigation. Monash having issues around terms and words. We get that a lot as well. I don't understand the terminology. It's not explained to me what these things mean. It took a lot of time to find the information. So a lot of voice of customer again around this, saying it was too much information on the page, too much to navigate. And that is something we get a lot. One of the key things that comes out in this task is the word cluttered, not clear. So again, this is 3 examples here. Again, I could have picked lots of others, but there are 3 particular examples here of brands that do a sort of medium in this. We're getting a lot of voice customers saying cluttered, website messy and cluttered, so much information I couldn't even find it in search, nowhere to start, too much useless information for the sake of writing and filling space. So one of the key problems here is there's just a lot of information on one page. It's difficult to navigate. I've got so much being thrown at me, I just don't even know where to start. So who is doing this reasonably well? Well, we actually saw earlier that actually the University of South Australia online achieved the highest success, 88% success, and actually around an 80% satisfaction. And this is for a couple of reasons. They have a smooth path from the home page. The course page for this particular degree, or for degrees, is only 2 clicks from the home page. So users aren't spending 10-15 minutes even finding the page before they start. Just a smooth journey into that particular piece of information. And then 2 clear clicks from the top summary into entry requirements. Prerequisite is called out, could be better, and this isn't obviously 100%, but prerequisite at least is called out with a little bit of bolding. It makes the maths qualifications quite clear. The journey itself, as I say, to get to that page has already meant that consumers are, or potential users are, feeling that they are in the right place. So predictive search offered to reveal the courses available to a keyword, makes life very simple and easy. Alternatives offered if, for example, consumers type a word incorrectly, which is very helpful. There's nice filtering in terms of what might I be interested in. So again, getting at this idea of, does this suit my needs? Is this the level of study, the area of the study, the start date? Do I want to start immediately? Do I want to start in a year's time? So I'm already starting to feel that before I've even got to the course page, that I'm looking at something that is likely to suit my needs, because I've been able to specify those already as I've gone through the journey. I can shortlist here, I can compare. Again, we saw earlier, one of the key things, and this is the second tranche, of being able to compare courses, and the UNISA enables users to do that simply just by clicking on them from this search result. UNISA helps consumers go through the next stage by saying, well, actually, is it accounting and economics you're interested in, or is it management accounting? So very much helping users, by the time they've got to this page, they're thinking, yeah, okay, this actually looks like it really suits my needs, because I've ticked a lot of boxes before I've even got here. So again, you can access, compare, view, print, download all the various pieces of information that I might need. Sticky nav, long pages are fine. Long pages are very common when it comes to course pages, because there is a lot of information. Some ways of helping consumers through that mass information is concertina approach, which we'll see in a minute, but also this idea of sticky nav. So as you scroll down the page, the top nav stays there and you see it constantly as you go down the page. You can jump between the pieces you're interested in quickly. So consumers here can jump between getting a brochure, actually I have a question, I want to favourite it because it does look interesting, I want to compare it, or actually it's fine, I want to go to the next stage, I want to apply. So consumers are feeling when they got to this, they've got something interesting, and there's some very clear next steps as to where they might want to go. We mentioned this comparison tool. Again, this is something that not many providers are letting users do yet. It's early stages in a lot of people's development of this type of product, this type of page. It's obviously something that users as a whole are very used to being able to see. If you go to any other product, if you go to buy a mobile phone, you go to buy apply for an energy product, you will get a comparison page. So your students are expecting this kind of content. So this has some nice features in the color differentiation, makes it sort of clear, but on the downside of that, obviously it looks like this is recommended, so quite what's going on there. There's a lot of text here, but it would be better if that was sort of concertinaed. You do have the ability to remove courses that you're not interested in, which is great. So it's giving you some nice next steps. There's some good elements of this comparison, but as a principle, this is something, as I say, that users are expecting you to be able to do. Certainly compare your own courses. In a perfect world, you'd be able to compare your courses against third parties, against other providers. That's next step down the journey. Get this right first. As I say, this is something I think we will see a growth in, because it's very much something that users are expecting to be able to see based on their previous experience with other industries. Other ways of doing it, I said there's this concertina idea. This is UTAS, much clearer page. You can immediately see a lot of white space on here, which is nice. Text size, style, icons work together to make this much less of an intimidating page. And the concertina approach means that users can just look at the stuff they're interested in and close the stuff they're not. So this approach enables a lot of information to be put on one page, but users very much focus on the stuff that they are particularly interested in. Similarly with QUT, has a good score, considerably above the average for the course. And sign of font to highlight key information. Consumers thinking that this information will help them learn about the course. The page is uncluttered, for example. So again, quite a busy page, but getting a reasonably good score in terms of uncluttered because of the headers and because of the titles used, but also because of the information. It's got the key information for consumers, including course outcomes. You were mentioning that earlier, in terms of why does this suit my needs? Why am I doing this? What am I going to get at the end of this course? An example from actually from the UK here. The study is run in Australia, but obviously there are sometimes we see examples from other industries that are really interesting, or from other territories. So this is Warwickshire in the UK. Again, a very clean and uncluttered approach, using the drop downs to make sure that all the information consumers would need is on this page, but you can focus on one piece at a time and not get overwhelmed. There's not a lot of sort of cognitive overload going on here, which is what tends to happen with a lot of pages. And interestingly, when we do a study of the most successful pages in terms of information hierarchy, we do tend to have some similarities come through here in terms of how pages are laid out most successfully. Obviously, there's a lot of research that's gone into behind this, but I just thought it was interesting to see some of the highest scorers tend to have course properties at the top, with calls to action clear next to them in that header, in that hero image. They have a page, then be a strip of course facts, and then a strip of course details. And often you'll find, as I say, that a lot of that course details is progressively revealed as you go down the page in terms of concertinas or drop downs. It's not all up front and given to you immediately. So here again, you've got quick links, you've got course facts at the top, you've got the drop downs on Curtin. So this idea that all the information is here on the page, but it's not being pushed at me immediately as I start my journey. So that cognitive overload is reduced by giving me the key facts at the top, the call to action, and then letting me as a prospective student figure out what else it is I'm interested in. The other thing that's really key in helping consumers find things that might suit their specific needs is search. And I just got a couple of slides here showing you how some people have been effectively using search. Because again, this is something we find is generally not particularly well done in this industry, but it is something that consumers expect you to be able to do because other brands do it. Other brands do very effective search these days. And I'm not just talking about Google, I'm talking about retailers, energy providers, I'm talking about content providers. So there is an expectation that I will be able to search and it will come up with relevant results. So great search comes up with relevant results, but it tells me why they're relevant. Why have you decided this is what I want to see? Great search comes up with a comprehensive list of what I want. It comes up with everything that might be relevant. And again, that is down to the definition of relevance, but it's comprehensive, it's correct. It curates predictive search. It doesn't just show words that absolutely match. It shows stuff that actually might be interesting and useful to the user as they're going through their journey. But it also picks up errors. It picks up spelling errors, synonyms, alternative terms, did you mean? So it's helpful. It doesn't just plug a few letters in the top and produce a list of pages that have those letters on it. It shows users useful results and enables them to filter to figure out what's actually interesting to them. We saw earlier an example of the Uni of South Australia, and again we've got that here. Or exploratory, where consumers might have a number of criteria in mind and they want to explore options around that, and the search and the filter really helps users do that. La Trobe and ECU do this auto suggestion. So again, rather than just picking up the letters, it starts to suggest things as you type, which obviously reduces the data input that consumers are required to do, but also gives them a variety of interests, shows them a variety, isn't just pointing them down things that absolutely match what they've typed. It's saying, well, actually, as you type, this kind of interesting things come up. Are you interested in the Master of Professional Accounting, the Master of Financial Analysis? So sort of helps consumers navigate the content. And that's actually something that we see most of the leading universities start to do now, is dynamically load the top level results as you type. Most people operate a sort of tab system then to get through the results, apart from Deakin. People take slightly different approaches. So UTAS, for example, displays a lot of the results as you go through. So there are different ways of doing it. As we always go through these things, there's not one perfect way of demonstrating the results or showing the results, but what they do tend to have in common is, as I said, this dynamic approach. As you start to type, it starts to show what the results are, but they also have in common this way of filtering. This is something the LSE in the UK again does, again another industry, another territory, the London School of Economics. As you start to type, it starts to show you results, but what it does is not just show you a list of results, it shows you results under different types of content. So it might be everything, but it also might be research, programs, so actually the study, the type of study you want to do, it shows you news, it shows you events, so perhaps you're looking for, actually looking to go and attend something. So it shows you the results, but it doesn't just assume what you want. It says, actually, this is the kind of content we have in the different sections. You can jump straight to it now. So helping consumers get through the mass information on the website without making assumptions about where they are, what they want, letting them do that, but letting them do it easily and quickly without then going through several steps of filtering. And again, Warwickshire College, we saw them earlier, a pretty good example of a number of things in the UK. A different approach looks very different here. Search is front and center on the home page, but again, this idea of dynamic searching and then helping consumers filter that very quickly in terms of types of course. Am I looking for an apprenticeship, distance learning, full-time? Where the college actually has a number of physical campuses, so is a particular one I want. So again, very quickly I can filter this search to come through to things that I am sure, or I'm pretty certain are going to meet my needs specifically. Because again, as I say, there are a lot of examples here that we can use from other industries to say, well, actually, people are expecting you to be able to do this because other brands do it. So TED Talks, which a lot of your prospective students will be aware of. A lot of content here, again, quite a stripped down page here, but I've searched for something, it's realized I've made a mistake in terms of how I've spelt it, it's given me the results, it's given me topics, it's given me speakers that talk on that. I've got a filter on the left that says, do I want talks, do I want people, do I want playlists, blog posts? And it's also quite helpful in terms of if I search for something that doesn't exist, it actually says, well, actually, you couldn't find anything quite like that. It doesn't say no results. It's just that little bit of extra step of, okay, we haven't found anything, but perhaps you could try changing the term, adjusting the spelling, searching with filters. It doesn't just say it's actually nothing here. It's not helpful. And obviously other examples here, Apple. Again, your students will be very au fait with almost certainly with the Apple website. They do this idea again of predicted text, but split into filters, into what you might actually be interested in, a bit like the LSE. The keyword is highlighted on the results, so I know why it's giving me that result. And you can build the filters slowly as you go through, because obviously they've got thousands of results. So being able to apply the filters individually helps to get through all of that content. So as I say, the idea being that you have got a tremendous amount of content, and what you need to be able to do is help prospective students get through that in steps that will enable the final page to them to actually think, yeah, this will suit my needs specifically, and I'm going to be able to find on this page whether I can actually apply for this course, whether it does actually suit my needs. Ultimately, taking steps to guide users to things that actually meet their needs is something that we are seeing environments, or seeing universities start to think about. This is quite somewhat of a difficult one, because again, there's a lot of information here. What do you ask people in order to be able to filter stuff that would be interesting to them? University of Melbourne has started this idea of, well, actually, am I an Australian native? Am I an international student? What have I already got? So am I coming in with no qualifications at all? Do I have the Victorian Certificate of Education? When do I want to begin study? So rather than taking it from a interest point of view, which is what the study search tends to do, this is saying, well, actually, who are you? What is it that, where have you come from? And then we can start to say, well, actually, this is the kind of thing that might be interesting to you, that might suit your needs. And then you can then layer on this search of, okay, well, we know this about you. Now let's do a search about content, search about study areas. So just, again, taking that next step of going, okay, rather than just giving you all the courses and saying, right, you can go off and find something that interests you. It's saying, well, actually, we know our courses better than you do. We know what we've got. We know what you might be eligible for. Let us help you that first step down the line of saying, who are you? What have you got? When do you want to do it? What are you interested in? Okay, well, now we'll show you the stuff that's interesting. Obviously, the consumers can then go back and have a look at other stuff as well. You're not removing their options of seeing everything, but just helps them get through that thousands or hundreds and hundreds of study options that they are met with when they first start doing the research to figure out whether they want to go and study with you. Because it's a daunting process, but as I say, they have high expectations. This audience is often millennials. They are very au fait with what the web can and cannot do for them, and so they're expecting you to meet those needs. So thank you very much for your attention today, or half an hour or so. There's so much more to see. As you said, there's thousands of data points within this, but we are very much out of time today. You've seen a very high level overview, obviously very tailored at a micro level to your brand, to become a client, access to this data through our online portal, but also access to insight activation workshops, sort of much bigger sessions that I've been doing today, very much tailored to your particular institution. What exactly would you need to do to improve that experience for your potential students? Who's doing it best in your industry, but who's doing it best outside of your industry in different territories, but also advisory hours for specific targeted research. If you're interested, please do drop me an email, rebecca.jennings@globalreviews.com. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you.